You're watching Analysts After Dark, an underground hideaway where insatiably curious analysts examine provocative project problems, share salacious secrets, and establish a covert network of co-conspirators. Step into the dark with your hosts, AJ Hawley and Steve Jones.
Well, hello, Steve. How are you?
Hey, AJ. I am fantastic. Enjoying the start to the holidays.
Wonderful.
How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Just got back from Vancouver at the conference there. Had a great time. Project World Business Analyst World Conference was so much fun.
And you have some big news from that conference. How did it go?
I think it went well. Yeah. So that was my first time doing a keynote, and I enjoyed it. I think it went well. I heard some great feedback from some of the other speakers and the attendees. So I think it was a lot of fun. It was a great audience. Everybody was super engaged, and I felt like it was a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And it was a good time all around. But
yeah.
The highlight must have been your first keynote.
I was a little bit nervous going into it, but I felt like once I got on stage, it felt comfortable. It felt like I was talking to a lot of my friends. I think since we've been doing the same, I don't want to say same speaking tour, but like the same kind of, we've come close knit with the group of speakers that are on a regular basis for Amy's conferences. I think it's been nice to see familiar faces in there and people that from, engaging like this. So it was really interesting talking to people that were, in my mind, friends, and it was like, oh, I'm just hanging out with a group of my coworkers and my friends. Yeah,
fantastic.
So it was good. And then my wife and I, my wife came up too, and so that was fun. It was her first time seeing me speak, and she said, "Wow, you're actually okay at this." I was like, "No, thank you."
Just okay.
Yeah, like, you did better than I thought you would. I was like, oh, I don't know how to take that, but I think it's a compliment. So it was good. And we got to do a little bit of vacation. So Vancouver is beautiful. We went to Whistler, which is where they had the Olympics in 2010. Beautiful area. Just, it's so weird going from like the seaside up to the mountains in just like an hour and a half. It's crazy.
Wow. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. You're actually somewhere different today too, right?
Yes, I am visiting family down in Pittsburgh.
Wonderful.
Sadly, can't connect with some of my buddies down here. Others have traveled as well. Bruce is traveling.
Oh, yeah.
Dan's a little bit far away.
Yeah.
Phil's a little even further far away.
That's true. You have to meet up in Cleveland, I think, Columbus in order to get everybody in the middle. So
either way.
I'm excited for our guest today. We have joining us Mr. Gregg Brown, and he has released his new book, which we'll talk about tonight. So we'll bring him on. So if you're not familiar with Gregg Brown, you should be. But Gregg is he's an international recognized change expert, best-selling author, and a keynote speaker who empowers organizations to thrive in the future of work. Gregg holds a PMP designation, a Master's of Social Science degree from the University of Leicester in the UK, with a focus on organizational psychology, leadership, and performance, and is an associate member of the American Psychological Association. His ideas on change, leadership, and the future of work have been featured in Forbes, Newsweek, Rolling Stone, and Entrepreneur, in addition to numerous HR publications. Gregg is the author of Ready, Set, Change Again, and his latest book is Spark Action: How to Lead Change That Matters. So without further ado, let us bring on our guest for the afternoon or evening, Gregg Brown.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for joining us. How are you
You're
doing?
welcome. I see the lovely Amy is in our chat window today.
She is.
Yep.
Hi, Ames. Hi, everybody else.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I actually read your book on the flight back from Vancouver.
What does the book look like? Can you hold it up again? I can't
like
quite
this.
see it. Oh my God, it looks really good. I love the cover.
And I remember when we hung out in Washington last year, you were just looking at different covers and you had, I don't know, 5 or 6 different ones and from different artists. And you said, hey, which one should I pick? Should I pick this one or that one? And I think you actually had this one picked, just, you know, for like the blue
You
one.
picked that one.
I did?
Probably. That's why I'm here, isn't it?
That's it. That's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. I missed my royalty check on that. Is that coming?
Well, I have to tell you, it's not coming.
Is this payment? Is it like a in-kind payment?
Well, it's more like Grace. You know, you're friends with Amy. That's enough for everybody.
Oh,
I would agree with that for me.
I agree.
So yeah, so tell us about what got you down this path, and then why you wanted to write this particular book.
Well, a few things. I was bored as hell in the middle of COVID. I had nothing to do other than do virtual sessions, and I'm like a raging extrovert. So it's really difficult for me to just sort of sit at home and do this all the time, which I appreciate this.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to see people and do things. So I had all this crap going on in my head from, 30 years of work that I wanted to get out. And, the biggest thing, I think, the reason I wrote it was because during COVID, I spoke with literally people from Syria through to Turkmenistan, like, places that are not in my usual scope of talking.
Sure.
And I kept hearing the same things, which, I've heard from BAs, for the last 25 years. I've heard it from project managers. I've heard it from executives. I've heard it from, everyone on the planet and organizations, which is, I have to sell people on my idea. I have to convince people to do this. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. And so the whole book is really about how to get people to engage in our ideas, to take action on things that are important to us, that doesn't involve trying to convince people. There's a way to get people engaged. And I just tell people, take the pressure off. Stop trying to sell and convince people, because it does not work. Any good salespeople who sell cars, real estate, whatever it is they sell, know that convincing and selling do not go hand in hand.
That's
so
true.
Tell me that difference then, convincing and selling.
Sure. Well, selling and convincing are two of the same things that I've heard from everybody. Like I've heard it from BAs who are like, I need to convince my boss to do this. I need to convince the project manager to do this, or the product manager, whoever it is they're working with. Because, the reality is with BAs, they might have a title of a business analyst, but they're doing 1,000 different things. Some of them are program managers. Some of them are, leaders of teams. They have this, job title that doesn't really encapsulate the full, scope of work that they do. And there's this whole piece of it we have to sell and convince people. And yet the reality is, selling and convincing involves, a one-way throwing benefits and reasons at people. Hey, you should do this for this reason, for this. And the rest of us are like, I'm too busy. I don't have time for that. It's going to be like 30 hours for me this week. And plus, I don't really care because, I'm going on vacation next week. So, my book really talks about how do we engage people so that they can not only listen to us, but our goal at work is to help people take action.
Right.
And even not at work, whether you're starting a business, whether you're volunteering, whatever you're doing, you want to get people to take action on your ideas, or you wouldn't be blabbing and talking.
Yeah. And engagement is the hardest part. Getting some kind of action beyond the engagement is the ultimate goal, but that's the hardest part of trying to get to it.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, Steve, because when I did my master's degree years ago, you don't need to call me master. It's quite okay. I mean, I know if you had a PhD, you'd call me doctor, but you don't need to call me master. It's totally fine. But I'll take it if you want to. But the piece is that we really think that, selling and convincing and education, when you go to university, you get education. And education doesn't mean you're going to take action. It means it's information. And you all can share information at work all you want. It's not going to get your work done. sharing information is not getting work done. Taking action on the information that you share is what gets your work done, because
Right.
the language that you use to engage people is the currency with which you get your work done. It's either going to work or not work.
Our whole job is to make it easier for them to understand, and half the time it's pictures because they don't want to read the words.
Well, so this is the thing, Steve, too, is that, I've managed a lot of multi-million-dollar IT projects. I know nothing about IT, just to be really clear. I'm not an IT professional. And one of the things I've learned, though, is that we have to translate our professional language constantly so that other people can hear us.
Mm-hmm.
And, the book really goes into detail about how do I really think about how do I engage people, because the change, the buy-in, the agreement happens in the mind of the other person. It's not about us. We have our mandate. They're busy too. So how do we come together and seek agreement to take action?
Well, I know in like the first, I would say half of your book, you don't talk anything about the change part. You talk about the personal part, right? So the individual, where the individual is coming in, and I think that resonated with me quite a bit.
Yeah.
I know you and I had talked in, I think it was Washington last year, about imposter syndrome. I
Yeah.
had been doing a presentation on that myself,
Yeah.
and it's kind of even what got me into speaking. But you were talking about that a lot in here, about how you deal with imposter syndrome, and then really even knowing yourself. Can you tell me about how you would empower somebody to look inside and get feedback from, either their friends or so on, to help make that change, and why that's important?
Yeah, the first 2 chapters in the book are really about that. The book's divided into 4 sections. It's really, the first part's about getting a PhD in yourself, and then the whole chunk and change is after that. And then, how do we get people to engage with teams? And the last part of the book is really, how did we deal with the difficult topics, the stuff that people have, beliefs about, it's going to make extra work for me, that sort of stuff. And I think your question about, how do we deal with that imposter syndrome is we all go through it. I go through it. I've been doing this work for 30 years, and still there's times where I get up and go, who am I to talk about this? I don't know nothing.
Yeah.
And I think the trick is with that, there's a few things about this. I think the trick is to find people you can talk to. So, for example, Amy, who's on our call here, has heard me tons of times. I was probably even saying it today. We were chatting on the phone. I'm like, I keep comparing myself to this person and this person. And she's like, shut up. She doesn't say this, but I'm sure, Amy, you probably don't say this, but she's like, shut up, Greg. This is her inside. We all have our inside leadership voice and our outside leadership voice. And the inside voice, I'm totally guessing this. I'm sure she doesn't do this, but this would be me. I'd be like, shut up, you're fine. And that's what we say to people who have imposter syndrome. I know Amy wouldn't say that, but I would think that. I'm like, look, you've got this. You've written a book. You've done this. I went to Amazon #1. Had to put that in there. And yet I still go through this thing where I have to compare myself and go, oh, he's 30 and gorgeous, or this and this, and he's really smart, and he's doing these groups, and I want to do these groups, but I don't really want to do these groups. I want to do my stuff.
Sure.
Because this is the thing. People can argue with your facts. They can say this about you, AJ, this about Steve or myself. Nobody can argue with your experience and what you bring to the table. Because every person, we could be 3 BAs here, and thank God I'm not a BA, because I have no idea how BAs do what they do. Like, I'm just no idea. It's a job that is not my strength, and that's why I've always had great people around me, because I'm clueless with that stuff. But it is much more about having a group of people you can talk to about where those pieces reside that you just don't feel 100% secure in. And that's hard, because but when you talk about it with others, it gets it out, and you find other people have it. And I'm sure there's some other wisdom in my book I'd have to read to remember, because it's 8 o'clock at night where I am.
That's the first thing that I think I found when I was talking about imposter syndrome was that the more that I shared,
Yeah.
the better that I felt, because everyone else goes, "Oh, you feel that too? Oh, me too." And they have that moment where you recognize that everybody feels this way, and you're like, "Oh, I'm not unique."
Yeah. And I think it is about, part of doing keynotes, and congrats on your keynote, AJ. I'm so excited that everybody loved it. Woo! No, I didn't see it, so I'm not sure if I loved it, but I'm going to go that I think you're pretty cool. So I think it was probably really good.
Thank you.
And, Amy's the person who gave me my start, and and she knows this. I credit her today. I would not be where I am if I hadn't had that run of conferences where I got to fine tune. And it took me, I was good then, and then I went through a bull where I don't think I was good, and then I come back to being good. So I think it's natural to have ebbs and flows. So and that's part of the imposter syndrome thing too. Like, is about growth and change, and whenever we stretch out of our comfort zone, and this is in the book, whenever we stretch out of it, it takes energy, and it makes us feel less than capable sometimes. And you, AJ, going from the great work you do as a symposium and workshop leader, and I've seen you do that, you're just so awesome in front of people. Moving into a keynote space, you go from being an expert, workshop facilitator, to all of a sudden you're a novice speaker. And it's and I've gone through that, and it's hard.
Yeah.
And it creates vulnerability. And you just need people to talk to about it, I think, is what's really important.
And also learning from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was
and
lucky.
I think that's the key thing.
I was lucky. I have, solid friends that I can ask for feedback. And I even did a dry run with some of the other speakers that
Good.
were presenting it beforehand online. So just like this. And I
Great.
will say there's a definite difference between doing it like this and doing it in front of people on a stage set. Like, you have a different energy, it feels, but to
Well, let
me,
me tell you about that. So there's a story about that in the book too, which is all about, and this is, my story is, I used to teach presentation skills years ago. And I always say to people, if you're going to do a keynote or a workshop, you have to stand up in your office. You have to have your dog or cat or person sitting on the sofa. You have to have a clicker, and you have to go through your keynote or presentation standing up like you would with an audience. Because this is not that.
it's not
This
that.
is doing a virtual session, which practice it like this. But even when I worked with CEOs years ago, telling them how to do, good corporate presentations, like stand up at your desk. I don't care how silly you look, but you got to stand up and you got to say the words.
Yep.
Thinking them, what happens here doesn't come up here, and I know that in my own life. And we're under pressure. What happens up here really doesn't come out here.
Yep. I can't tell you how many times I've practiced speeches in the shower.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I just, in my head though, so you're practicing it, but it's still in your head, and then it definitely changes the way that you deliver if you
got to
do
get it out
in front of somebody else. Yeah.
Well, you're using a different part of your brain. That's why.
Yeah.
The talking part of your brain is different than the thinking part, and you create new neural pathways when you talk it.
Yep.
And then you also get a sense of the voice inflection that you need or want to have.
Totally.
Can't get that just thinking it.
Yeah. And
it's about, when I do keynotes, I also get up, and Amy knows this, anybody who's ever hired me, I get to the stage early. I got to block it. Where am I going to stand? What is it going to look like? Am I going to come off stage, which I always do?
Yeah.
I got coaching years ago, AJ. So don't listen to a lot of coaching. I got coaching and said, when you go off stage, it makes you look less credible. I'm like, it took me a year to figure out that was crap. But people love when you do. So
I think that's right. When you go off stage and you get a chance to interact with people at a specific spot, and then now you're looking at individuals eye to eye, and it's like, hey, we're one and the same.
Well, and there's a famous person listening to this who always says, don't iron out your quirks.
So yeah, of course.
I always say kinks, but it's actually quirks. Don't iron out the kinks.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a little double entendre there because.
Well, maybe for you, but not for me. I think about anyway. Well, God, that's another topic. Oh, my face hurts.
It's after dark. And speaking of
that is you, Amy. That is you.
Speaking of which,
yes,
we forgot to ask you the most important question,
which is,
what is your favorite after dark activity?
I can't say.
You can't say. Well, you can.
You can.
My favorite after dark activity, I'm probably embarrassed to say, I love this. I love to sleep. I love sleeping. I love sleeping more than most things. Other than my favorite thing when I'm not sleeping after dark is going out for a really nice dinner. I love good wine, good food.
And that's fair. You know,
I'm a wino and a foodie. I like good wine, good food. When I was 17, my friends who were basketball players and football player, they're like, what do you do on the weekends? I'm like, I go out for dinner with friends. Like when I was 17, I went out for dinner. I think that's what I love to do.
Translation, the people asking were not your friends.
You know what they were? They were just football players and,
But not the ones you go out and have good food.
No, they didn't know what dinners were. They just went to the field and ran around in tight pants and did whatever football players do with throwing balls around and stuff.
That's it. That's all it. Yep. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, you've also had a mixed career, right? You've had a lot of different jobs in a lot of different spaces. So I want to talk about that for a minute, like because you have a non-traditional career path for sure. I think you started out working in prisons.
Well, I started out working in Star Bizzles at Starbucks.
Oh, you said that you're
Starbucks is listening. Don't sue me for saying Star Bizzles. Yeah, my career. Well, I'm lying. I'm completely lying. I started my career as a waiter, as server in a restaurant, and then I became a restaurant manager, and I wasn't very good. And then I was waitering and then I became an office person. For the first 6 years, from when I was 17 to 23 or 24, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I got a job at Starbucks, and the woman, don't laugh, who was my boss. Well, she wasn't my boss, but she was the person who took care of training and stuff like that. Because Starbucks was started in Canada by 3 women, Patty, Joanne, and Barbara.
I thought it started in Seattle.
It did in Seattle, but in Canada, it started with those 3. So I was part of the team that when they opened in Canada, we opened the first 20 stores, which sounds, that must have happened in a week. Well, it actually took 3 years back then. But it did start in Seattle. But my point is that this woman named Gay, that was her name, Gay Niven, and I still credit her with starting my career. She taught me about training and speaking and workshop stuff. And I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. And so I did that with Starbucks, which was awesome. I opened all the new stores and did all the training with all the new staff and got them up and running. Then I went to another store and did the same thing, which was a great experience. And then I started to work in healthcare and do outreach to people living on the street because they needed training in non-traditional things like, how to live on the street healthily, sexual health, all that sort of stuff. And there's a story on that in the book about teaching sex to nuns, which I used to do. And if you can do that, you can teach anybody or train anybody on anything. You really can. You really can. If you can teach sex to nuns, you can do anything. But the thread, it looks non-traditional, and yet the thread is very much education, learning, and change. Throughout the whole thing is that's what it is.
So Amy was tell them about the nuns. Yeah.
You want the story about the nuns?
Well, I mean, I think we have to know.
If there is one, bring it out.
True story. It's in the book. And it's really, it's in the section in the book, which is applicable to all of us who work in organizations, which is how do we get our message across to people who are really, not attached to our message. So that could be, you have a new IT project, you have a new initiative. People are like, I don't have time. I don't care. And that's like teaching sex to nuns. They're like, they have religious moral values, belief, and I'm going to teach them about sex. So so true story, these nuns, I'm sitting in a room with 25 women. They all happen to be nuns. And they were like the Sound of Music types of nuns. And if people are too young who are listening to this, you have to Google what the Sound of Music is. But the Sound of Music nuns are great nuns. They don't want to convert people. They don't want to make them go to the religion. They just want to do good on the planet. And these women really wanted to do that. And they were learning how to work with people on the street and how to interact with them in non-judgmental ways. So they were working with sex workers, known as prostitutes. Yep. They were working with drug users. They were working with pimps. They were like everything you can imagine in the downtown east side of Vancouver. So one of the pieces of the workshop, it was a 2-day workshop I was delivering, was how to desensitize them to some of the street language that they were going to use. So you don't need to know what all that street language is, but you can just think about what it is, everything you heard on the schoolyard. And so picture this. I'm in a room, 25 people. They're all women. They all have markers in their hands. There's 25 pieces of flip chart paper on the floor. On the top of every flip chart paper are words for body parts between the neck and the knees, body parts between here and here.
Got it.
Those body parts and all the practices that go along with those body parts. And we're standing around a circle. I'm like 28, like I'm a baby. And I'm saying to these women, okay, you see all these words here. I want you to write down all the street terms, slang terms, swear words you've heard about any of these body parts or things that go with the body parts. So they're like, ah. And so, I tiptoe in and I write down under one of the headings, something, really innocuous and, something that's, sort of light and funny. And they're like, oh, ha. And then one of them writes down. Then another one steps in. Then after they're all in there writing all these words. They filled 25 pieces of flip chart paper with the dirtiest words I've ever seen. Like some of them I remember today, and I'll tell you them offline, but I'm like, I've never heard that. And I know I've told Amy some of these. She's like, I can't believe that. So you have to read about that in the book, even though those words are not in the book. But what was really interesting is we finished that activity and we looked through it and analyzed it and stuff like that. There's some analysis around that, which is important to our conversation. But what was interesting as there was, the outcome is, and this is what's important to all of us in organizations, when we break through our own beliefs and barriers about what's right or wrong, good or bad, and just sort of ground it in fact, whether it's, I don't want to do this because it's going to create extra work for me, or I hate you, or, whatever the stuff is that we have about why we don't want to help other people or engage with them. And, there's people I've worked with who I don't like, and, that's just the way it is. I don't want to help you if I don't like you. And the reality is with these nuns, if they can break through their own self-imposed limitations, their morals, their beliefs, and do this activity, and the purpose of the activity is not just so they can write down swear words and giggle. They were able to serve a whole new population of people. So essentially create a whole new line of business.
Yeah.
With people they didn't have before. So that when sex workers came up to them and said, hey, there's something going on down there, and used whatever swear word or street term they used, the nun wasn't going, now, dear, that's not the right word.
It's all about connecting.
They could listen, they could provide feedback and give some resources. And that's a metaphor for all of us in our jobs. We all want to help people in our jobs. Anybody listening to this, they're good problem solvers. And the good thing about being a problem solver, people's going to give us more problems to solve, which keeps us employed.
Yeah. I have to ask, did you bring a switch or a yardstick ruler with you?
For what?
When you were teaching the nuns?
No, because these were Sound of Music nuns. We didn't use those sorts of things. And I have to be very careful when I tell that story on stage, actually. AJ, in case you ever tell nun stories, because some people have had good experiences and some people have bad.
Yeah.
So that's why I always say they're the Sound of Music types of nuns, because they really were. They were just these lovely women, and they ranged in age from 25 to 80. And they just wanted to do good on the planet.
Well,
and isn't that what we go to work? I mean, even when we're getting paid at work, we want to do good. That's why we're here. We don't want to be putting up with crap all the time.
Yeah. I think I have two things from that story.
Oh.
One is I have a new workshop idea that I'm definitely going to employ now. So it's
Which is?
doing that is putting down
Oh, yeah, do
paper on the floor and then writing out as many swear words as we possibly can.
Well,
Like,
you have to do it for a
exercise.
purpose. There has to be a purpose.
Well, then that's the second step I'll have to come up with.
We need the right context.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
doing that flip chart thing on the floor is a great activity, and you could do it around people's perceptions around being a business analyst, or problems with change, or there's a whole bunch of things you could do.
Good cop, bad cop.
So that's one of the other thing I'm doing. Yeah. So that's another workshop I'm doing in Toronto. Yeah.
Good.
The other question I had for you was, did you ever say, hey, you can say these words, but don't make a habit out of them?
No.
No.
No, what I did say, that is so bad. What I did say was, you don't need to use these words. I just need you to not react to them. And isn't that the truth with change, though? When you think about this in the workplace, you know, BAs that I've worked with are often very technical, and they'll come to me with all this stuff. I'm like, I don't have a clue what you're saying.
Yeah.
Can you make this a little more simpler for me? Because you're going to have to go explain that to other people, and they're not going to have a clue what you say either, because you're an expert in this field, and I don't have a clue what you're saying. And so there's a translation, you know, that has to happen from the BA, whether it's to a project manager, to the CEO, to the program. It doesn't matter who. But when we're experts in our area, which I would say BAs are, it's about the translation and not having people, when they come to you, going, oh my gosh, I think this change is silly, just like what the nuns might have said to me. It's about saying, you know, I hear you, and this is what it is. So you're doing that, you're creating the same space that I did with the nuns as I do with a workshop or in a keynote stage, and, you know, that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot of relevant pieces, and you could make a habit out of it and wear black and white, AJ.
You know,
you got it in.
Gotcha. Oh, I love Judy's comment. The nuns of the 60s need to discipline today's youth. Good point, Judy. The nuns I worked with were not like that. They were just, and they never wore habits. They just looked like regular, normal people, but were married to Jesus.
One of the other things you bring up in your book is self-imposed limitations. And I think that that's something else that happens a lot in the BA space.
Yeah.
That we look at this and we say, this is our limit. This is where we belong. And you know, I feel like there's so much that can happen in our roles where it transitions to literally anything, you know, and I think from anything.
Yeah.
So you could go from working retail and starting out with zero idea what happens in IT, but being a very curious person, and then go right into analysis and have a job there.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about like your experiences with those self-imposed limitations and what you found important.
Well, the quote is, you know, self-imposed limitations are our greatest barrier to change. And what I believe is, you know, what we believe we can or cannot do is not usually real. Like sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So, you know, I do a lot of volunteer work with entrepreneurs, and I work with the Prince's Trust in Canada and in the UK with veterans who are, you know, are coming out of traumatic war zones and have started their own businesses. So I mentor them with their businesses and stuff. And, you know, some of them are, and I see this with BAs, I see it with everybody in organizations, like they start down the path. Well, I think we're going to do this, but and then before they even go down the path, they're like, well, but I don't know if my boss will approve, and blah, blah, blah. And like, but then, and you know, they talk themselves out of it before they even start. And, you know, one of the things that I've really learned is that if we can survive COVID and get through it, and I'm not saying this to minimize anyone that has had family members pass away, and how, I mean, not minimizing that at all.
Mhm.
If you were able to work through COVID and shift, for example, from being in person to virtual and, do this to this, bring up your kids, do your kids at school at home, survive being at home in lockdown. There's all that crap and stuff we went through. And I don't say that crap as a judgmental way. It's just like a lot of crap we have to deal with
Sure.
on all levels. If you can do that, what can't we do? And I mean that seriously. When I look back, and if you'd said to me in March 2020, hey, you're going to be delivering virtual for 3 years, and I'm going to be like, don't sign me up for that. I'm just going to go out into the lake. I don't want to do that. And yet we all did it.
Yeah.
No matter where you lived on the planet. Well, I shouldn't say that true. In Western Europe, in North America, when I was speaking with the UN and stuff, I'd have people from, Kenya, Somalia, or Syria, and they're like, we love lockdown, we're not getting bombed, so it's all about perspective. Right? And I really believe if you can live through that, what can't you do? And there's a great, near where we live here in Port Dover, there's a great little chocolate shop that's in a little town called Hagersville, 2 towns over, that was started by a Syrian refugee who took the risk to start a chocolate shop. Now, that's a big risk to start a business in a country that you've never lived in.
Yeah.
And I remember I went in to buy some chocolates one day, and I said, what prompted you to do this? He said, I lived through a civil war. I can do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that is a similar premise for all of us after COVID. And I'm not saying go burn out, burn yourself. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, when we look at our skills and abilities that we use to do those 3 years or so, depending where you lived on the planet, it was shorter or longer. Those skills and abilities will help you navigate the future and deal with all the shifts and changes that are coming up, because the pace of change is picked up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to continue. What we need to do, regardless of whether you're a BA, in a BA, like I said, that's just probably a small part of your role, because you probably do 100 different things. Dig for those. What are those skills and abilities? Because those are going to be the pieces that you can apply to help you in the future.
Yeah, I think when we were doing your comparison a second ago, the lockdowns for us was probably the first time that we've had to deal with anything that required resilience, like long-term resilience.
Yeah.
And where that is fortunate for us, it's not the same everywhere else. And so exactly in the chocolatier that you're talking about, that person, they had to deal with literal resilience on all fronts.
Yeah.
And now they have like, well, if I can do that, then I can do anything.
But so did you, and so did Steve, and so did anybody listening to this. We were all put in situations that is not normal in our lifetime here in North America to be put in. And as a result of that, we all develop new skills, new abilities, and identifying what those are is key to engaging people in the future. Because one of the things I've learned is that crises are where you find your greatness.
Yeah.
Crises are where your teams find your greatness. Crises are where your organizations find their greatness. And why is that? Because crises push us in ways that we have not been pushed before. We've developed new change muscles, new ways to handle things. And that's for everyone on the planet.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to learn when you take the time to observe what's going on or what's happened.
Totally.
And you can reflect on it. And as BAs, we're supposed to be skilled in observation and reflection, being able to look back and think about, what did we just go through and how can I learn from that and react and do better going forward?
And how to plan, and how can I use that to plan for the future? Because often, with requirements gathering, you're not just looking at, what are we doing now? We're looking at what happened in the past. What do we learn from that? What are some lessons learned? How is that going to impact the requirements that we're gathering today? What does that look like for planning the future? Because BAs are driving change. They're integral to drive change. They're not just like, You know, when people say I'm just a BA, I'm like, okay, just erase the word out of your vocabulary. Just this. Like, no. Like, you're driving change. You're driving it.
Yeah. I think that's awesome.
You know, and that's the thing.
Yeah. So we got a lot of great nuggets out of that. Thank you so much, Gregg. We're going to move on to our next segment, and we're going to open up this to the BA hotline.
Woohoo!
Bear with us for 1 second, and we'll get the hotline started.
Let's eavesdrop on the BA hotline and see what provocative project problems are awaiting us. Is your project in hot water? Operators are standing by. Ooh, that's hot.
All right. So it is the BA hotline. We have a question, and the question is, what do I do now? It is by LC from Self-Described, the Fifth Layer of Hell. LC says, I work on a production support team and my shift rotation is coming up, but I have a vacation day. I asked the team who can cover my 1 day, but I get nothing but crickets. My boss said I need someone to cover me before she approves my whole vacation. Shouldn't she be helping by managing and leading?
Do you want me to answer that?
First of all, yes, absolutely.
So here's my take on this. What's your internal process? There has to be some, there has to be some sort of internal process around how to handle this sort of stuff. So I always say, go figure what that is. Because, getting people, if your policy is you have to get someone to cover your shift, then that's that. Now, the trick, I think, with this, if you're getting crickets, it means you have to find a different strategy to engage the people that you're talking with. So it might be offering an exchange. If you're able to cover my shift this week, I'll cover your shift when you take a vacation. It could be something like, I think offering an exchange, a fair exchange for taking action, which is a really good strategy to help people engage, would be the way I would go with this, because I think you're more likely to get people to do it. Because, people are busy. And I think we have to remember that change happens in the mind of the other person. So we need to think about, what do they need to be, do, know, or have to say yes to this? Well, they probably need to know, hey, if you cover me, I'm going to cover you. That's my take. So, but I'm open to what other people have to say.
So this one hits me hard because I've been in that situation a bunch. But my philosophy is, I'm telling you, if I've requested off and you approved it, I already told you I'm not going to be here. Yep. I'm not going to be here. And then I can ask everybody if no one else is asking. At that point, it is no longer my responsibility as an employee to ask anybody else what they need. Like, management needs to step in there and say, hey, here's how we're going to fix this, because it is not my spot. I'm allowed X amount of vacation days. I'm taking all X of those vacation days, whatever that is.
Could you go to your manager and say that, though?
Oh, so that's gets me in trouble.
That's all I'm going to say.
I 100% say that, and it gets me in trouble. I'm like, listen, I'm going to be gone here. I'm telling you that I'm going to be gone, and I will not be available.
Well, and I think that's okay if that's your policy for your organization around what that is.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is, I think policies differ in different organizations, because I agree with you. Yeah. And if your policy is, you can take whatever time off and you have to cover your shift, which I used to have to do as a waiter. Like, I'd have my time off, but if it was a special thing, I'd have to find someone to cover it.
Yeah, me too.
So it depends on I don't know enough of the issue around that, but I hear you. I agree with you. If I'm giving you my vacation time, figure it out.
Figure it out.
And it's not a but, it's an and. I'm willing to help you transition that workload while I'm gone, which is, this is the stuff I need to do. I'm going to be away. Please do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned some of this in my keynote, and I think the thing that bothers me the most when we have vacation time, et cetera, and it's like, so there was a study done that says 52% of people admit to working while they're on vacation. And that to me is just mind blowing, right? So when I'm on vacation, I'm dead, and I don't exist, and I resurrect myself when I come back.
I love
And
that.
the reason for that is it's intentional. We end up harming our organizations by working when we're on vacation.
And that's completely true from the research.
Yeah, and for two ways. One, we become burned out, and then we are resentful personally, but also we're plugging holes in a sinking ship that they need to fix on their own, right? So they either need to hire another person, have somebody else there that is going to be able to accommodate that role. So we're just filling gaps for them without them really owning up to it.
You don't recharge if there's no disconnect.
Yeah,
and that's very true.
Yeah, and to be honest, if you take a week off, that recharge only lasts for a week. You get much more benefit from actually doing small vacations and having regular time off and regular hobbies and regular relaxation days, etc., than you do from taking an actual vacation.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and I think personally, companies hire or they hide behind the policy. Like, well, our policy states, and it's like, well, that's just a dumb policy. Have you ever worked for an organization that had a dumb policy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, though, the trick, I think, for all of us, because this is the thing, and in all of our careers, people blame us for stuff, right? So people blame management, people blame the BAs, people blah, blah, blah. And, I think there is something to be said about not the sort of yes, but yes, and yes, I'm going on vacation, and this is what I'm willing to do to support whatever the transition is, versus, again, depending on your environment, versus just saying, hey, I'm going on vacation, figure it out, your management. And I know you're not saying that, but it's I think there's a way to be solution focused and do that.
Yeah.
And I agree with Amy. I think we need to be able to expense liquor. I think it's I'm with you, girl.
Well, I think I'd hit the threshold for this limit and be like, yeah, I'm sorry.
Day one.
Yeah.
Well, it almost sounded like LC, right?
Yep.
It almost sounded like they were trying to work with the management, and the management was like, it's all you.
Yeah, and you know what?
That's not
sometimes
supportive.
You just got to suck it up if that happens, right? You're like, okay, I'm going on vacation. Figure it out.
Yeah.
It depends on your role, right? And it depends your dynamics and your relationship with your boss and issues of safety. Like it's a complex conversation, even though it seems simple.
Yeah.
But there should be some support from management.
Management should be helping and leading. I think that there's responsibility there. As you mentioned, Greg, there's responsibility on your end to make sure that all of your bases are covered and everybody knows what's left over to do to pick up.
For sure.
But you are allowed your vacation time.
Absolutely.
You earned it.
Yep.
And you should take it.
Absolutely. I completely agree, especially when we're so busy these days. We need to get a break.
I agree. We need more of a break.
I agree.
So I discovered that myself, that I have a new purpose. My purpose is to make sure that happens. It's to use technology to make sure that we spend less time at work. So that's my goal going forward, 2024 and on, is to make sure that we use all this cool AI and automation and all of this fun stuff that we have available to us to spend less time in the office and to make sure that meaningful work actually gets done.
Except for keynotes, you need to be in front of people for that, AJ.
I agree there. So that way I can spend more time doing keynotes. Good call. Good call.
Yes.
All right. Well, if you have your own questions, feel free to visit analystsafterdark.com and submit your inquiries to the BA hotline. And then we can answer your questions on air and try to stump our guests, ask them tricky questions.
Oh, dear.
I know. It's so much fun. And I don't think we have any in the... Oh, there we go. So Amy says many companies in Europe specifically disable employees' email.
They do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's very true.
That's fantastic. I know I worked in the finance industry for a little while, and they made you take 2 weeks off.
Yeah, you have to.
2 weeks. No, seriously, it was off. It was at least 1 week full week because they wanted to check for any sort of fraud or things like that were there.
Yeah.
So it was a compliance issue on their end as well. So that was kind of cool.
Awesome.
Wow.
All right.
Cool.
We have one more segment.
Okay.
And
now it's time for BA Confessions.
this actually would be a great time for your nun story. We should have had that. But these are confessions from BAs. However, if we don't have any, then we get to ask you confess the things that you either have experienced or you've seen in your career at some point where someone's like, yeah, here's what happened. We did this and it was a huge flub up.
Do you want me to tell you what my big flub up is?
You can share one that you've done, or you can share one that you've witnessed. Either way, whatever makes you more
So
comfortable.
one of the things I learned years ago, so I'm a big person about stakeholder engagement. So when I'm doing projects and initiatives, I really want to engage people. But sometimes I don't really want to engage the people I don't like. And I know anybody listening to this doesn't have that same issue, but that's me.
Okay.
You know, I just don't like to talk to people I don't like, truthfully. It's just, why bother? But, you know, you have to in the workplace. And I was doing this big rollout for a hospital. This is 20 years ago. And the CEO had signed off on it. We were all ready to launch. Then I get a call from the head of finance, who I hadn't engaged in the whole initiative whatsoever. And I should have. I just thought, you know, I'm just going to ignore him and maybe he'll go away and not pay any attention. He phones and goes, how come I haven't been involved in this? And I said, well, you know, I'm like 30 or something at the time. I don't know. I forgot. And he kiboshed this whole rollout, which cost literally probably $150,000 to reschedule. And I've never forgotten the lesson of over engage. Like when you think you have enough engagement, you don't. And it's better to engage people purposefully and over engage people. I just don't mean random communications, but purposely engage people and engage more people than you think you need.
Yeah.
That was my big, oh my gosh. I'm surprised they didn't fire me, but they didn't, but I'm surprised.
Yeah.
So it was just delayed, not completely.
It was delayed, but the delay cost us $150,000 because we had to reschedule. We had people lined up. We had technology ready to go. I had about 100 stakeholders who were engaged in it, from like professional associations through to individual patients. And oh my God, it was a nightmare. And it was just a simple, well, actually it wasn't it was a purposeful oversight. And that was my big, I just didn't want to talk to him. I didn't like him.
And what drove I didn't like this person? Was he just
I didn't like him. I just didn't like him. You know, and that's the thing, you know, and I know this is nobody listening. Sometimes we work with people we don't like, and not in the organization anybody's in now, but in other organizations you've worked in. And you know what? It just sucks because you don't have time to deal with that sometimes. And I just wanted to avoid it. And I've learned over the years not to avoid that. Oh, Amy says, I had a coworker who screwed up and asked me to take the blame so she wouldn't get in trouble. Oh, that's a hard one.
And regretted it. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, I blame you for all my bad keynotes.
Wow.
Not that I've had that many. I've had a few. I've had 2 that I can remember. I'm kidding. I'm totally
Even other conferences. It's all Amy's fault.
Yeah. Sorry, Ames.
Well, thank you for sharing. I think that's a great lesson learned. You know, it's one of those things where you do work with people that you don't like. Of course you're going to, right? And people that you just don't jive with, and personalities. Yeah.
How do we get past no? How do we get those people engaged?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's a hard effort to eat a little bit of crow if you've messed up and go back to them, and especially that person.
But that's okay.
Okay, well,
But sometimes you need to give them the option to say no.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because if you make them comfortable enough to say no, then you can find out what the real objections are.
Absolutely. So true.
Well, at this point, just want to say, Gregg, it's been fantastic having you on the show.
Thank you so much.
You, wrong one. There we go.
Oh, I love the music.
There we go. It's the end exit music, outro, intro. So, Gregg, actually having you on has been fantastic. It was awesome talking about your books. It was great reading it, and then just hearing your own, ideas come from written word versus, in person. So it was.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's a great book, and it's inspiring to figure out, oh yeah, so I've got my own changes that I'm trying to do. There you go.
Well, Cookie Monster loves it too. Cookie Monster loves it. It must be good because it went #1 on Amazon. So yeah. Cookie.
So where can people find out more about you and get in touch with you?
So they can go to my website, bechangeready.com. That's a good place. I know you're going to put in the show notes my LinkedIn, so feel free to stay in touch with me on LinkedIn. There it is. Just
Put it right
search. I come up. And where else? My website there. That's good enough for me. And I think we're going to share an article that I wrote. That's an excerpt from the book so that you get some freebie stuff for coming to this.
Awesome.
And it's just been great to have you both here. And AJ, I'm so excited to see your keynote career take off.
Well, thank you.
I've seen you in front of groups, and you are just awesome and so warm and inviting and sort of smart. So that always helps when the smart combined with that.
I'm going to write down
I just can't wait to watch
profile.
you go. I can't wait to watch you go. So that's what I'm excited about. And thank you, Steve, for being here as well with me and interviewing me. Thank you.
I'm going to put down my LinkedIn profile that, sort of smart. And then it's like,
you're super smart.
No, he said sort of smart.
Sort of smart.
Sort of smart.
You can't just have looks. You can't just be good looking.
Gregg Brown says I'm sort of smart. And if I ever write a book, that's going to go into my book 100%.
Well, my what's really funny is my staff used to say to me, I'm secretly smart.
Ooh.
So what does that means overtly? I'm just not that smart. So I'm going to go with that. And Steve is doing 2 workshops next year. Yay, Steve!
Yeah.
And Amy knows how to spot them. Look at AJ. Look at me. Look at Steve.
Steve is going to be in Toronto. Yeah.
I'll be in Toronto and Orlando.
Orlando is so much fun. Orlando is like spring break for BAs. It's great. Well,
Look forward to it.
That's our show, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been wonderful. Thank you to our awesome guest, Gregg Brown.
Thank you.
Been amazing. And our next show coming up in December, it'll be December 6th at 8 p.m. We have Azure McFarland. She is a Microsoft MVP. She does a whole lot of cool stuff with Power Automate and automation and AI. So we're definitely going to geek out for that session. So don't miss that. It was just posted today. So make sure that you register for that on analystsafterdark.com, or you can go into our LinkedIn page and check out our company page on LinkedIn. So thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thanks,
and happy Thanksgiving if you are on the American side. You Canadians already celebrated yours, but happy belated Thanksgiving, if you will.
Happy Thanksgiving to you all. Gotta run. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye, Greg.
He did say he was going to be gone at like 9 o'clock, and he's, he was just a minute early. He had 1 more minute. But, so from Steve and I, this is Analysts After Dark, reminding you to stay curious
and stay positive. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.